per person, and so that leaves us a substantial amount of time for you to ask questions. So why don't we start to my far left, and Kathy, you want to introduce yourself, please?
Hello, I'm Kathy Barco. I am the coordinator for Alameda County's Homeless and Caring Courts. I helped facilitate the community planning process with Judge Branco to launch that, and then have since been the liaison between the court, the providers, and the litigants, and also have been the coordinator reviewing all of the applications, determining who's eligible, managing logistics, and keeping everything kind of on track and moving.
Good afternoon. My name is Renato Schietta, and I'm an attorney with the Legal Aid Society of Orange County. And we are one of the collaborative partners of the Community Court for the Homeless and Veterans Court, where we provide the civil legal services to the participants of those courts in all the various issues that they have.
Hi, my name's Wendy Lindley. I'm a retired Superior Court judge, and I was privileged to work in the area of collaborative justice for my entire 20 years on the bench. And at the time I retired, I presided over a standalone court that handled 10 calendars of collaborative court justice, 5 for clients who were diagnosed with a serious mental illness, a combat veteran court, a homeless court that was comprised of over 1,000 clients, many of them veterans, also DUI court, and 2 drug court calendars. And Steve.
This microphone's a challenge, I'm telling you.
It's okay, Steve.
It's all right? You can be high? All right. I'll be high. All right, I'm Stephen Manley, and I'm a Superior Court judge in Santa Clara County, and very similar to Wendy, without repeating, I do a large number of collaborative courts, and I also work a great deal in the past couple of years, 2 years, with our county and our city and our other stakeholders regarding our very serious homeless problem and the new group of homeless people that we are seeing in our county. And finally, I've recently created a new form of homeless court, which we call outreach court, which is out in the community.
Thank you. I want to start off, first of all, with Kathy. Kathy, you're not an employee of the court, but how does having a partner that is not associated with the court contribute to the functioning of the homeless court?
My background and experience for 25 years is actually in the area of homelessness. And in a homeless court, you might think that that is a benefit to have someone who understands those dynamics of homelessness. In the past, I served as a case manager in those courts, as well as the director of a nonprofit serving agency, and for the last 15 years have been doing consulting and technical assistance for communities. The homeless system is under enormous pressure. You've heard Secretary Shinseki mandate to end veterans homelessness by 2015. We haven't talked much yet today about part of the other federal mandate to end chronic homelessness by 2015, and to really redesign homeless service delivery systems so that homelessness is not a permanent label or permanent structure, that people lose their housing, they come in contact with the homeless service delivery system, and ideally within 30 days or less are rehoused with the services that they need being provided in the housing setting that they have. And that shift and change is very enormous. It really affects the livelihood and how homeless service providers have always done business. And so having a liaison that works on the homeless court project that can bring along our community partners, the shelters, the drug treatment programs, the drop-in centers, the employment programs, and really help craft a protocol that works for both the legal side as well as for the homeless serving agencies, and most importantly for our litigants, I think is a really valuable role that can be missed if you just have representatives on the court leading it from the perspective of the court.
Did you have a PowerPoint?
Yes. All right, so I'm curious, being fairly new to this arena, I've Heard that we are preaching to the choir here, but I'm wondering how many are soloists and how many are the backup singers in this choir that we've got going on. So soloists, raise your hand if you directly work for a collaborative court, that is part of your day-to-day job opportunities. Wow, 10-ish. Then the rest of you, I'm assuming you're backup singers. You are fans of this process. You are supporting it in other ways in the community. You're part of courts and judges and other types of legal professionals that are supportive of this court. Yes? All right. In your community, if you know, raise your hand if you have 3 or more collaborative courts. Homeless courts, veterans courts, mental health, behavioral health care. Good, we're doing better. A quarter. Good. Awesome. Part of what I'm hoping to say today is to look at also moving us beyond kind of this intellectual exercise and moving on to some things that hopefully will promote some action. I think it's easy to sit at conferences and you soak things in and take notes, but I'm hoping that you're also thinking of what you could do differently when you leave out of this doors and get back to your offices on Monday. There are 3 key tools that I'm going to talk about harnessing the power of your homeless courts and your treatment courts to impact real changes for real people. The first one is collaborating actively and partnering with service providers. The second one is collaborating to match the right program with the right intensity for people who need those services within your county. And then lastly, collaborating across jurisdictions to complete the work and make sure that we're wholly serving the litigants. Some of you might notice that collaboration is the key word in all 3 of those things, and I think that's really reflective of how important I think that concept and that need really is. Collaborating actively and creating partnerships with the right service providers is the topic that Renato is going to spend some time talking with you about. So I'm not going to say much about that. I'm going to let him talk about how to optimize that. But I am going to say 2 things. One, homeless service providers will jump at the chance to collaborate with court programs. Typically, that's seen as an area that's fairly impenetrable. We don't know a lot about it. Homeless service providers don't know the ins and outs, and so you will have a willing audience in most instances. Secondly, the timing is right. There is a lot of pressure for the HEARTH Act and federal legislation through Opening Doors to end homelessness. That gets translated down into local jurisdictions, local communities, continuum of care councils that have a responsibility for tracking and measuring and having some accountability to how well communities are reducing the number of people who are homeless in their community. Having courts partner with that is really essential. The status quo, the way we've been delivering services both in the court and in the homeless community, are not on a sufficient pace to end homelessness. We need to do things differently and to be very radical in our thinking and bold in how we're recreating programs and impacting a bigger change. Secondly, collaborating to match the right court program with the right intensity and the right type of services to the right person. Most of us have got our brains around the idea that one size doesn't fit all, but we want to also work and encourage you to create intentionality in your court programs. Ideally, collaborative court programs should be mirroring the expanding and compelling research that is out there about homeless people and what types of service needs they have. What we are learning really is that there is an enormous population of people that do very well with a light touch of services. A light touch of security deposits or housing subsidy to move them in, and some supportive services to help keep them there, and that for the vast majority of homeless people, that is sufficient enough to allow them to become self-sustaining and back on their feet. There is a much smaller proportion of people that what we would need what we would refer to as kind of a medium touch of services. They need that housing assistance to get in, some support to stay there, and most importantly, they need a safety net of people that follow them for a longer amount of time, work collaboratively with them to meet their treatment goals, to meet their court obligations, to assist with a job search, to assist with finding meaningful activity to fill up their time in the day so they're feeling like a contributing member of society. And then, although it seems like it's a much bigger portion of who we've talked about today, actually those people who need our most intensive services are actually the smallest number of people in our homeless service population. So it's easy to focus on those who are the most difficult to serve, and while we need to do that, we also want to make sure that our collaborative court programs have a place to serve all homeless people who need varying levels of intensity and duration of services. Oftentimes, homeless courts can be the place where light to medium interventions can happen, and our more intensive court programs can happen through the behavioral health care courts and other types of parolee reentries, those type of court programs. Veterans court programs oftentimes need to have a place where they can meet veterans across that span, the light touch, the medium touch, and the most intensive, because they're not a homogeneous group of people. They have varying needs. So want to make sure that our court programs are really tailored to that. For those people who need the more intensive programs, I really would like to push you to collaborate very extensively and name names. Find your partners that have a vested interest and start talking about people. Who are the folks who are out at the biggest encampment? What are their names? Talk to the beat officers and the police officers. What are their names? Those who are showing up continually on the dockets that people are frustrated about. What are their names? Who's frequently in court? Who uses emergency rooms and cycles through detox centers very frequently? Start naming names. Communities across the country have made enormous progress in setting up programs that collaborate with the court, with outreach programs, with mental health service providers, with a whole host of people where they are identifying specific individuals and then following that particular individual with service needs and engaging with them at every opportunity until they can get them into housing, get them into the level of services, get them into court, get them taking care of what they need. And don't be afraid to think creatively and to operate that kind of a very perhaps counterintuitive type of program. In doing that, share data. Share about client information, share PFNs, figure out where folks are staying, but really invest in the infrastructure and a process that identifies those people who are having the most difficulty navigating through your programs and systems, and focus intentionally on serving those people. Kind of an upside down approach. Most of our other service programs, those who are most equipped to navigate through the system can make their way to us. But think specifically about those out on the streets, those having problems in our other types of programs, and really focus on programs that serve that. The commonality is identifying those who are the highest risk, the highest cost, the most vulnerable, and targeting services to those people. In programs, also make sure that we're not losing track of the lower level things, that there is coordination and collaboration across the programs in your county. A good chunk of you said you had 3 or more collaborative court programs in your community. Are there mechanisms in place that allow people to be referred from one of those programs to another? Do your highest level of intensity courts also address the issues around driver's license? Looking at making sure that we're providing a full wraparound scope so that we're addressing all of people's needs as we're collaborating within our jurisdictions. And then lastly, collaborating across jurisdictions to complete the work and make sure that we're wholly serving the litigants. Homelessness doesn't know city boundaries. It doesn't know county boundaries. Homeless people don't care about those things. People are going to where they need services. In many counties, the shelters and programs that have openings and have spaces are oftentimes not within the geographical boundary of the jurisdiction where someone lives. So people are choosing between staying in my home county and sleeping outside, or going to another county in order to get a shelter bed or a treatment bed that I need. For that and other reasons, people often are amassing tickets in multiple counties. And in Alameda County's homeless court, we have somewhere between 0 to about 22% is our high of litigants on our calendar who originated in another county in California and have referred those cases to us. On the flip side, we have anywhere between 20 and 35% of those litigants who start in our county and start with our homeless court program who also have matters in other counties, for which we issue cross-county referrals asking other counties to please give consideration to this person and their matters in light of all of the progress that they have made with their treatment, with their parenting, with their job search, with their housing, with their community service, all of these things that folks are working on. And as much as it is a great weight lifted to have all your fines and fees vacated from your county, for most folks, it doesn't accomplish the job. It's not enough to almost get your license back. It's not enough to almost not have my wages garnished, to almost get on SSI, to almost find housing. We really need to look better across jurisdictions at how we're supporting each other in promoting housing stability and preventing recidivism. This, I think, is a best area practice that we could do some improvement on in California, and in our counties is really having a good referral protocol and relationships where we're working more collaboratively across the jurisdictions and across the, in particular, homeless courts and other treatment courts inside of the state. Sometimes our funding streams or a particular data collection process are the barriers to that. And in that instance, I would say we're much smarter than data collection systems and in rules, and we're able to really think creatively and find solutions for how we can work around that. So would put out there as another being bold and being radical, really thinking through how in your counties you're dealing with cross-county issues, and are you receptive and do you have those protocols in place to really honor folks who have matters in multiple counties. There was a comment made earlier about this collaborate, collaborate, collaborate. And honestly, until there is more radical resources, more radical mechanisms for how resources can be diverted from one system of care to another system of care and shared, we don't have much of a choice except for to collaborate. Our insufficiently funded courts need it. Our insufficiently funded housing system needs it. And certainly we know our litigants both need and appreciate our efforts that are collaborative and creative in finding the solutions that work for them.
Thank you very much, Kathy. Thank you. That brings us to our next speaker. Renato, I have 3 questions, and I know you're going to remember all 3 of them. First of all, what are the important roles and functions of collaborative partners? What are some of the challenges and difficulties you face dealing with participants in homeless court? And how can collaborative partners be sustained to work with our courts? And I think Kathy's touched on a couple of those issues, but
certainly did. Great, thank you, Judge Barranco. Well, as I mentioned, I'm an attorney with the legal aid side of Orange County, and I want to give some light to how we became this collaborative partner with the Homeless and Veterans Court that was formerly presided by Judge Lindley. I've been in legal services for 17 years, so back about 4 years ago, I was doing, our housing cases, our family law cases, public benefits, helping our low-income community. Our executive director comes in and says, Renato, I got a call from the court, and Judge Lindley is putting together this court and is looking for collaborative partners to be part of the court, and I think you'll be the one to be doing this. And I kind of scratched my head and I said, what? I go, Bob, that's a criminal court calendar. I'm not going to be able to do much in that calendar because we do civil, and I'm just afraid that I'm not sure what we'll be able to do. He goes, just kind of go over. They're going to have an open house, and we're going to meet Judge Lindley, and let's go. I'm like, okay, great. So we go. And I quickly began to realize this was a very special type of situation coming. But still, I was like, I wonder what we're going to be able to do. So, and again, I did a lot of IRS taxes. I mean, I was doing all my great stuff. As we now became a partner of that court and meeting the other collaboratives, it really hit a light bulb. Like, whoa, we've really been missing the boat, because there have been a lot of homeless individuals who I thought I was serving, but I was only serving one piece out there in the community. All of these individuals coming through the Homeless and Veterans Court had and have several civil legal issues. And then it dawned on me again, at Legal Aid we really had, and it was brought up at another panel, this real oddity. Because you see, to get our services at Legal Services, at Legal Aid, it's through a hotline system where you have to call in through this hotline to get services, appointments made, client comes in, you deal with the client. And then I thought, whoa, we have not been really serving the community out there very well, because many of these individuals, youth, families are not accessing our services. And so learning about being part of that collaborative and the function I knew very quickly that very vital. Also relating to the relationships created as a collaborative partner of the court. Learning the functions of the court and the other partners who I didn't really partner with. For example, the Public Defender's Office. Legal Aid over here, Public Defender's Office over there. We never really had a relationship. Now we're getting all these cases that are referred directly to me, as well as other organizations in the community. We knew they were there, they kind of knew what we did, we kind of knew what they did, but we never worked with one another. And this was a really great opportunity where, as collaboratives, we came together and we started working together to provide services and how we triage many of these cases. Also, it puts us in a really, I think, important position of helping to be a bit of the eyes and ears of the court, because we're looking at these cases through a lot of different lenses. And it does provide an opportunity for us to report back to the court to say, this is what we're seeing. These are some of the issues that we're looking to address. And I completely agree with Kathy that you do have to set up these mechanisms where you want to be able to report to everybody what's going on. So you have to create systems that are a bit different. And at first it's a bit uncomfortable with these systems. But you have to embrace it, because if you don't embrace thinking a bit outside of the box, you're really not going to be able to serve, I believe, the participants in this court. So looking at now the functionality, which you all know that, it's vital. I do want to hit points about that. There are challenges and difficulties, though. Number one, it is really hard work, because there's a feeling that, well, the participant comes in, you provide service, and you're done. With the group coming through the homeless, veterans, and other similar models, I have found that what you really need to do first and foremost is create a relationship. That when you start really just coming on too strong, you're really going to actually put these individuals off. They've been very much disenfranchised. They don't trust people. I think one of the problems that we have in society today, and what's really happened with our, economic collapse, people just don't trust our systems anymore. People don't. We had systems in place that we all trusted. Banks, different segments of government. And things have been let down. And people have a real distrust. And even more so are homeless and veterans. And so when you come in and when you start talking with them, they're looking at you, you're just another person that is maybe not going to be able to help me. So one of the things I've learned is patience, patience, patience. You want to create that relationship first and start developing that trust. Many times, number one, they may not realize they have a civil legal issue. So, for example, in just normal conversation, learning about, well, what did you do before, what have you? And again, many of these individuals were very, very productive people. And they may have a quote-unquote tax controversy problem. They're trying to get stabilized, maybe they're trying to look for work, but they have this tax issue looming. Here, I could come in and help them get rid of that. Or they're trying to apply for SSI. They've applied, and they don't even want to talk about it anymore because they've been denied those and other programs. And sometimes it can just be getting the documentation together for them, or going to bat. Which brings up to the point that working with the homeless and veterans, we have to take the hardest of the hardest cases. Let me give you an example. There was this individual, and this was through the Veterans Court. He was homeless, brought back AK-47, got popped on it, arrested, and has 2 crimes now on the record that he had to plead to in order to be part of the court program: child abuse and weapons. His kids get removed, and a guardianship is placed over them. And he hadn't seen the kids now for a period of time, part because he was trying to get himself rehabilitated, other part, the guardians, grandparents, really were putting up these roadblocks. These kids represented money for them, and let me tell you, they didn't want that gravy train to go. I thought, not a problem. It was a termination of a guardianship. I've never done one of these cases, which, of course, I didn't tell him that, but I was going to place this case because I've never done one of these cases ever. And they're complex cases. I couldn't place the case. Everybody kept telling me, Renato, good story, but it's a very complex case and expensive, because we have other referral systems that we could refer to, and even pro bono ones, and nobody wanted to take this case. So I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to take the case. And it was very challenging, hard, but we got his kids back. And it's a lot of these cases that we take, and I believe we must take. And as challenging as they are, it's not about winning. It's really about the advocating for these individuals. And it's also really important, to be able to define that, homelessness, we want to define it, there's chronic, we have those that are in transitional housing, those that are newly homeless, we have the youth, families, and we really got to take each and one of these cases very, very case by case, and provide the best services possible to them. Which means that as collaboratives, we really have to work with one another. And we really do have to learn what we each do in order to be able to refer the cases between us in the best way. And I think that has been a very success story, and that this has helped a lot of individuals, through the court. Also, a big part is educating ourselves. We may think we know a bit about homelessness. We may think we know a little bit about drug addiction, substance abuse. But I think it's also really important that in order to be able to be very effective, we really have to become very well educated in these areas, which has prompted me really to do a lot of research, a lot of reading, buying a lot of various books, some good, some not so good. And learning, what I don't know, and I thought I knew a lot being in legal services for 16, 17 years. And I learned, whoa, and I'm still learning every single day on these issues. The other challenge is finding people, 'cause I don't do this by myself, bring in volunteers and others. People are very passionate about this. It's one thing to say, I want to help. It's another thing to say, you know what, I am going to help. And I believe it does have to be in your DNA, because it's not easy work. You have other clients that, may not be very nice or don't want your help, or they tell you, what, scram. I have one client, she's still mad at me because I got her name wrong on a form. And she tells the judge every time she goes about all the bad things I did in her case. And I did. I misspelled her name. I'm sorry. The other component And the last component is about how to sustain this. Sustainability is really, really important because look, one of the things that's going to come across your bosses or everybody else, they're going to say, okay, we're going to put a lot of resources in this. Money. A lot comes down to money. And luckily, and my boss have come and said, we're putting, resources. And I go, absolutely we are, and we should continue to, because we are obligated to go to the access points. And one of the access points is our courts. And if we don't do that, we're not affecting our community. And so I think that's kind of put the lid on that for a bit. And so I just want for everybody just to think about that being a collaborative is truly has been for me one of the most, rewarding experiences. And the most rewarding part is the thank yous, because really that's all that they have to give. But their thank you that they give you is worth $1 million. So if you are thinking about being a collaborative, want to be a collaborative, or hoping to link others to be collaboratives, some issues just to think about. And I'm happy to answer any questions during this or after I give you my cards to look at more issues.
Oh, thank you. Thanks, Renato. Judge Lindley, Orange County operates a one-stop shop for homeless outreach court. Would you tell us your approach?
Yeah, I'd love to. So when I wanted to set up this court, the reason was because, as we all know, we lose people, right? We ask them to go to counseling. We ask them to go to job rehab facility or some other place, and they don't go. So traditionally in criminal justice, what happened? A warrant would go out, they'd come in, the judge would order them to do it again, they'd do jail time, they'd go back. It's ridiculous. So what we really wanted to do was have a place where all the collaborative courts would be in one venue with 23 ancillary services on site. So my courtroom was there, since I just retired, but my courtroom was there, and right outside the door I could say to someone, go straight down the hall because social services is in that door there. Or go to the left and Voc Rehab is right there. We have a children's chamber, so when they're in talking to me or they're in counseling or with one of the ancillary agencies, their children are well taken care of, which is also a wonderful thing to consider if you have the opportunity to do this, because we've actually found children who are ill and not receiving proper medical care. And we have a medical clinic that comes once a month on site with nurses, psychiatrists, psychologists, medical doctor. So as you know, these homeless court clients neglect their medical well-being. Many of them have serious chronic health problems that we were able to address by having on site this medical team that would come and work with them. We were also, because they would see other people going in and getting the assistance, we were even able to get a whole lot of them to get flu shots and things like that because they saw other people doing it and they signed up as well. So also on site we have the healthcare agency maintains an office. We have a computer lab, so we're actually training people not only rudimentary computer skills, but also job applications, how to fill that out. The healthcare agency keeps hours there, but they're also right across the street. So if somebody has a substance abuse issue, a mental health issue, we're able to immediately do an assessment and hopefully link them. The VA keeps hours there, the VA Justice Outreach Worker. We have 2 VA Justice Outreach Workers. We're so lucky. They are gold in your jurisdiction. Try to get one if you can. They are very, very educated masters in social work, and they work as case managers in our combat vet court. But they also have another officer who comes and helps any veteran that passes through our doors. So if we can't help them out in the Veterans Court, if we can't help them out in one of the mental health courts, the DUI court, the drug court, the homeless court, the VA Justice Outreach Worker will ensure that they receive those benefits that they've earned and deserved. So let's see, what else? We also have legal aid on site, Renato, that you just heard about. And I do want to do a shout out to him because that veteran I was talking to you about in our small group, The one that went outside his apartment complex clearing the perimeters, that's the kid he was talking about. He did a 3-day trial and got those children back for that young man who's an absolutely, as it turns out, wonderful father. We all had the opportunity to meet the children several times, and they're really thriving. So let's see what else we have. We have a law enforcement officer who keeps office hours in our building. He is specially trained to work with the mentally ill. He is the most compassionate, kind, wonderful man you'd ever want to meet. And I can call Randy up anytime and say, hey, I haven't seen so-and-so from our homeless court. Would you mind seeing if you can find him? And he will find them and bring them in for services. It is an amazing partnership that we have. We also have a foundation. Our foundation raises money to provide teeth, medication, emergency housing, all kinds of things that our clients need. What I think I want to leave you with, and I'll cede to Judge Manley because we're moving along here, is that so much of what we do in these courts is about respect. It's about respecting the human being. It's about treating a mentally ill person with dignity and respect that maybe they have not received, since their diagnosis. It's about hope, and it's about belief that this individual truly can turn their lives around and have the life that certainly each one of us in this room wants to have the opportunity to live. So with that, Steve, if you're...
All right, Judge Manley, and I'm going to give you the microphone for about 10 minutes.
Yeah, good luck.
Actually,
I'm on the
9.
other side,
Yeah, actually 9. But you too, of all the courts in which you have sat, you too have started an outreach court dealing with homelessness. And could you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Well, let me first say that Wendy has set the model that I think jurisdictions everywhere should follow. And I think the most important thing is that the courts need to step forward and take ownership of doing something about homelessness, rather than simply sitting back and doing nothing but processing cases. Because when the court leads, as you can see with Judge Lindley's program and her remarks, tremendous things can happen. When the court does not lead, nothing happens. And you perpetuate a very, very serious situation that does affect individuals' lives. I have come to have a better understanding, which I will not be discussing because Gordon doesn't want me to, about homelessness. There's been very dramatic changes in our county. We have gone from not being on the map to being number 4 in terms of the largest population of homeless individuals in the United States for any large city, in the city of San Jose, and the largest chronically homeless population. I've also seen in all my collaborative courts something that I have never seen before, and that is people who have been in housing, have always had homes, have had apartments, places to live, family, who are now in the streets. Sure, we would see them individually, but now we're seeing large groups. And I mean, this is another group of individuals who are now homeless, who really come to you in sheer terror about being newly homeless and having nowhere to go but the streets. And it has presented a tremendous challenge to our court and our programs. We have tried to be very creative about it, and we are trying every month. We are forming new collaborations. For example, our city of San Jose is working with the county. This is unheard of in my county. The county and the cities do not necessarily get along, which has a lot to do with funding, of course, and politics. But this issue is now so serious, and so since our courts, our collaborative courts, only serve high risk and high need, We are the sort of the center for a referral agency, but basically a center for trying to present the need for change and new and creative ways to approach this. So I'm just going to talk about a few of the new and creative ways. By the way, when I say this has suddenly come upon us, it's from about 2010 to the present day. We never had this problem. Sure, we had the homeless court, we had homeless people every day, but we had a lot of housing, we had a lot of subsidized housing, and our county government put a great deal of money into housing resources. We have over 3,000 units of housing. We have, and it goes on from there. And now there's no room anywhere for anything, for anyone. People live. This morning, when I was in court, I've come to accept the fact that people live. They buy a car, a used car, and live in it. I mean, if you're on SSI, I mean, if you could hold together $500 and get a car, you just park it somewhere and it doesn't run, and you push it somewhere else, and you live in that, and that's where your life is. Talk about veterans, I mean, it just shocks me. I know the secretary and the people in Washington, they were going to end homeless. But I have too many veterans that they have vouchers, HUD-VASH vouchers, and they can't find a place to live because the rents are out of control. The rents are way up here, for $1,500 to $1,800 for a one-bedroom or a studio. I mean, come on, in the Silicon Valley, the most wealthy place I can think of in the United States, there's another side to this. So what are we doing? Because I got to finish up because Gordon gets upset when I go too long. So I'm going to talk about some creative things we've done in the last year. One, we have formed an alliance with a faith-based community. Now, certainly there's a separation between the church and state, but I'm going to tell you something. What we have found is that the faith-based community, all the churches together, when they come together and they work on a problem like homelessness and supportive services, you have a resource that we at least had never recognized before as government. So the courts, we have a direct relationship with the faith-based community, and what it's done is create more housing and more opportunities for people, and the word that has been used, I think, by all of us, of hope for the future in our lives as a homeless person, that's what they preach, and that's what they believe in. And if you bring them together, and you don't even have to do very much except call a meeting, and they take over and do it all, that has been an incredible new partner for us that we never had before. Secondly, we have done something that I truly believe in, and that is putting case managers into the streets, going to the people. Now, Wendy has a wonderful program, and she's absolutely right. Once you get them, never let them go, because they will not do what they need to do. They won't get the services they need. It's too far away and too hard to get. We have put, and I strongly support the program, of tying case managers in the streets. We call it the City Streets Team. And it goes directly into the homeless encampments. By the way, I'm not allowed to discuss this, but we do have the largest homeless encampment in the United States. It is called the Jungle. It's in 75 acres of land, and there are about, I think, 1,000 people living there every day of the year. And so what do? You leave the 1,000 people there and wait until they get arrested, or do you go to them? And so the City Streets Team are case managers who go out, they find the people, they get the people involved, they give them work to do, and they give them vouchers, which is all paid for by the city and county. There's no federal money here. No, the veterans aren't doing this for us. Nobody is. This is being done by the city and county. And I'm going to tell you it works, because what was talked about, this connecting, this seeing people as an individual, as a person who has special needs, there's nobody better at that, gaining trust, than a City Streets case manager, because they're like the people they're working with, and they're young, and they know, and they're enthusiastic, and they pick people up and give them to come to court, and let's get some help here, and let's do this. Next, what we are doing, we have a very long county, and again, it's my theory that instead of expecting everybody to get arrested and come to us that way, we need to go to them. I've gotten the mental health department and the substance abuse department, and we have mobile vans. And in these vans, we put the services. It's sort of like the veterans when they have their once every 20 years, no, I shouldn't say that, once every 2 years, is that it, or a standout. And you bring all the services to the veterans who are put in some place. But what we're doing is putting mental health, medical, dental, put it in a van and take it to the people. We're a very long county, and it takes an hour and a half to get from one large population center in our county to the south to the center where all the services are. And then it's an hour and a half, at least 3 hours a day in a bus that you can't afford anyway. So, it made no sense. So we're trying that. We've never done anything like this before, and other jurisdictions have. But to me, what it shows is that we're being creative. We're trying to figure this out. Finally, I've been doing homeless court for years, and one day suddenly something occurred to me. Who do we send to homeless court? We send all the criminals, right? All the guys who are in the collaborative court, and we help them with their tickets, and they do volunteer work and all of that. But I learned for the City Streets teams, there's just so many people out there who are doing well, except they have nowhere to live, and they can't figure out what to do in life, but they are not breaking the law. They're doing well, and we never encourage them officially by the court. So we created this court, which unfortunately should never have called it the outreach court, but I don't like homeless, because I think that's a stigma, by the way, and it is in my community, a real stigma. So we don't use that word. We call it outreach, and here's what we do. We reward people who do well. So if you don't get arrested, you get rewarded. And how do you get rewarded? Well, your traffic tickets go away, your cases from, we had it this week. I was dismissing cases from 1991, all your garbage from the past. We clear your record. We make you feel, we have your kids, The whole idea is this. Rather than focus, who's high risk and high need? Well, high risk and high need, you're high risk and high need until you get out of our system. And then you're suddenly no longer high risk and high need, because you're not coming to see a judge, right? So you're not classified, you're not on probation, you're not on parole, nobody's assessing you. You're just kind of out there. But what if you did well? Well, if we reward them, then my theory is it's less likely that they'll ever come back to us. And it's working. It's amazing. It's a program that involves the district attorney, the public defender, of course, the service providers, the court, and we go out there and we reward people. And we reward strikers, people with these horrible criminal records who should be in prison for life. And we reward them to try and encourage them and tell them that, hey, you at least figured out how to do this, and you're getting off probation and off parole. And this is, we want to give you something as a going away present from our horrible system. And so we're rewarding them. And that's working. And it is leading to people getting things that they never could, because all that stuff stops them from getting jobs. And so you talk about driver's license. Yeah, well, that's what we do. And then we have the person to get the driver's license for them with a contact with the DMV. But the bottom line to me is that, when you're faced with these incredible, insurmountable obstacles, you got to go back to basics and just believe in yourself that you can do these things. Get a bunch of people together that will work with you, and come up with new ideas. Stop doing the same dumb thing. Don't rely on housing vouchers for, don't say, well, HUD, why don't you send another $1 billion? What good is a housing voucher if you can't rent a place, right? And you got to look at, well, maybe people have to live in shelters. Maybe it's not the best thing in the world, but maybe it's a better expenditure of the money now to solve a problem now that the court is trying to grapple with, than wait for that wonderful, magical solution that will be 20 years away. And so we're investing much more in that. The city and county are even considering now buying some dilapidated old motels and turning them into the housing. Will they meet HUD standards? Good heavens, no. They won't meet any standards. But when you see people in the streets, and you have the constant pressure on us to get them off the streets, and now I have to close with this one because I forgot about it. No, this is what worries me more than anything else, is the enemies we create. We are used to having. I have the city councils. They don't want the people downtown. They want them off this, all of that. Sure, I'm used to that for years and years and years. But now the environmentalists are after us because the homeless camps are along a creek, okay? And they got the state of California, the marshals, to come in there and file complaints against the city for not getting them out of the creek. So what we're doing now is getting government to, I don't know, do what to the people next. But it's just something that just says to me always, you got to do more and be creative. Thank you, Gordon, for that time. I didn't go.
You're fine, Stephen. As you can see, none of these panelists have a passion for any of the things that they do. There might be a couple of questions, and we are on time. Does anyone in the audience have any questions of any of the panelists or all of them? Any questions at all? Yeah, sure.
Are they also available to people whether or not they're a client of the court?
Yes, they are. In fact, I kind of have a funny story about that. Our services, all of our agencies that collaborate with us are open for business for any citizen of anywhere. And basically, when we first started, I was kind of sad because we weren't getting many walk-ins. So I was talking to Randy Becks, our Santa Ana police officer, and I was going, Randy, you know, get the word out there more, and we were trying to get the word out. So Randy came up with the idea of a sandwich board advertisement to put out in front of our court. So I had to run it up through, you know, my PJ, and they agreed to do it. So Randy and I wrote up this advertisement saying, you know, everybody's welcome, and these are the services that we have. And it's, you know, it's worked. Not as much as I dreamt, but one day, a couple of weeks after we put that up, I was out in a hallway, and a man walked up to me and he said, I hear you help veterans. And I said, yeah, we do. And I brought him to our veterans outreach worker who was there, and they were able to immediately address his mental health and other needs, and actually took him right away to the VA. So, and he didn't have a criminal case. So that's what the goal was, yeah.
Questions? Yes,
If these programs are working so well, how come they are not being imitated by other counties? If you could speak to what allowed you to develop these programs and didn't allow the county next door to do it, and why is it that there is no demonstration effect, that other counties look at you, see the impact, and then decide to go that route?
Well,
No, that's fine.
Actually, you know, they have been replicated, and they are in many, many, many counties. We're just here, you know, two or three counties, but we have them in many counties. But one of the great challenges now in the courts is that the budgets of the courts in general, have been dramatically cut in the last few years, to a point that presiding judges are having to close courthouses, lay off staff, longer calendars, less access to justice for the litigants. And as a result, it is much more difficult to create collaborative courts. And this is a discussion that's going on in the legislature, because in the Assembly, which is the lower house of our legislature, there is a great interest in funding collaborative courts as a line item. But of course, in terms of the courts as an institution, if you can't meet your needs in family, if you can't, you know, you heard the story about when children are removed and how you have to go to court to get them back in this state. If you don't have access to attorneys, I mean, this is one of the things that is a real budget problem in California, which has nothing to do with being homeless, but it has to do with running courts. And presiding judges have to run a court that provides services to everyone who is entitled to receive them, and we have to have equal access. And when the funding level drops so dramatically, it is very, very difficult to expand these courts. However, even with that being said, they are expanding. And in terms of your question about, you know, are they demonstrated? Yes, the data is very clear that these courts work. I mean, everything that Judge Lindley said about her court, I mean, everything has been demonstrated to work. These are evidence-based practices. So there's no question about that. The real question is it's sort of like the question about the homeless. You know, it's one that comes down to how do you best manage limited resources to meet a number of goals. And for us, homelessness is like a number one goal, but for a presiding judge who has to look, having once been one, when you have to look at the whole picture, it's not always a number one goal for them. Len,
You did a good job.
did I get on my best as I could?
Yes, another question?
Thank you. So I work primarily with continuums of care, which are groups of organizations and government agencies and nonprofits and private entities that basically work on homelessness in all these different sectors. So I think what you guys are doing is really amazing, but I'm actually really interested in hearing how you coordinate with continuums of care in your jurisdiction, and in particular because there's a big push for coordinated services, in particular coordinated assessment. So I'm just wondering if you are working with that in any way, seeing how you basically are providing coordinated services.
Sure. In Alameda County, which I gather is probably very unique, the court is actually co-sponsored. Our Homeless and Caring Court is co-sponsored by the Superior Court and by Everyone Home, which is Alameda County's continuum of care equivalent. And when the project was discussed initially, those were really the partners around the table. The continuum of care as the convener of all of the service providers, also convening the voice of funders and consumers of homeless services, as well as then the court bringing all of its legal stakeholders to all participate in that conversation. I think that is an anomaly. I don't think that that often happens in a coordinated way. Coordinated assessment is a requirement now for all communities to have a standardized way by which people who are homeless and seeking services receive an assessment, are ideally identified for which housing resource is the best fit for them. If they can't be diverted back to friends or family or find some other suitable housing arrangement, and then they can have access to shelter beds, transitional housing beds, or permanent supportive housing beds. A lot of communities are still fine-tuning that process. The deadline hasn't yet arrived to have coordinated assessment in place and operational, so I think that's really the front end of it. We haven't launched off fully in that in Alameda County, certainly. We can hear more for Santa Clara and Southern California and see kind of where those processes are. But marrying those two systems is a fantastic idea and will be very challenging and difficult to do and will require lots of conversations. And it's worth the effort and investment that it's going to take to do that, especially since so many of the court projects really are on the front lines of where people are in shelters and certainly wanting to facilitate the access to permanent supportive housing for the most disabled and the most vulnerable. So you're asking a really great question, and I think you're several months kind of on the front end of that happening. In Alameda County, we have that coordinated assessment and identifying of most needy, most vulnerable on the streets folks, and we're kind of piloting it for that population first before we're looking at rolling it out for all other single individuals and homeless families seeking services. So we're a few months away.
We have probably time for one more question. If not, I'm going to ask a question, but I want to make sure anyone in the audience who had a question can ask one. Okay. Judge Lindley, I wanted to bring this up. I don't know that it's clear to everyone that the court that you were talking about, that you described, is not in the courthouse.
Oh, all right. So the court that I presided over is in an independent facility. And so it's just was my courtroom and all of the ancillary agencies. So when I went to set that up, we didn't have money. So basically, as Renato said, I just asked all the collaborative partners to come to a bunch of meetings and tried to draw them in as best I could because I couldn't offer them anything other than a whole bunch of clients in a very convenient place with child care services provided so that they could get a lot more bang for their buck in the building collaborating with us. And that's exactly how it worked out. Every single partner has followed through, has provided us with hours at the courtroom, and They, so far, so good. They seem to really appreciate the opportunity to have access to all these clients and to collaborate with all the other providers who are on site.
One of the axiom for collaborative courts is you have to have the right people working in that court. And clearly these 4 people are the right people. So our session's over. Please give them an applause.